So my first build video ever for Paragon, and you know, I'm at level 34 and I thought, hey, I've been playing Iggy up to level 6 now. I think I'm doing well enough with him that I feel confident about a build that I have created. Now I've obviously looked at other builds and I've kind of gone off of them early on, but then I've kind of created this build myself. Now it is known that you tank with Iggy and Scorch. I almost called him Epic Iggs because that's exactly what he is. Because in my opinion, he's even better at pushing lanes than Gideon because he's so tanky and does so much damage even when you build him like really tanky as well. You've got so much poke ability, you can zone out heroes, you can 1v2 on a lane, defend, you can even push back 2 enemies even if it's a tank and a damage dealer. He is really good for laning. So you want to keep him sustained. You want to keep his health up, you want to keep his armor up, his resist to energy damage, and also, you know, making sure that he can actually output a little bit of damage himself, as well as, you know, potentially taking away some of that energy armor that the enemy does have. Now, there are different ways for sustaining himself. Early in the game as well, you can see I've actually got 2 mana potions right there because he expends his mana quite heavily, and you can only put out turrets obviously as much as you're leveling up. So early game he's only got 1 turret, and then, you know, as you level up you get 2 or 3. Now remembering that you do of course have to replace those turrets if you want to place, you know, you can't place 4, you have to place 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then you replace the first one you put out. So make sure you remember that when you're placing your turrets down. Also, sometimes I use my turrets as wards, which is quite interesting early game as well, just because, you know, sometimes I don't pick up the ward that early. But wards, as RJ Sache says, save lives, and that's an important thing to remember. So, as we go into the build, let's have a look what we go for. We got Archmages. Now, this is up to you, because you do more damage versus minions as well, so if you need to push back, you know, that's going to be good, especially with the damage you already do. It's possible that you can actually go for something else here. You can actually go for the Centurion, which gives you extra health, and it gives you extra health to your minions as well, because you're already doing so much damage, but it gives you extra you know, sustaining those fights. So it's really up to you, but I'm playing around with both, so that's up to you completely, of course. Now I've filled out this deck to 40, which I think you should always really be doing. With pots and everything else. Even if you know you've got a spare card point, sometimes you can maybe stick in an extra mana potion or a heal potion or whatever, and of course a harvester key as well. I think everyone needs to have maybe a harvester key in their deck, because especially if you're solo queuing, which is what I do a lot, harvester keys also save lives. I'm not even lying about that, because sometimes you go into those games, how many times have you been in the game and you're like 10 minutes in and you're like, why is none of our junglers placing a key? Sometimes you just have to take that responsibility yourself. It doesn't screw over your build, you just have to make sure you're building it correctly and you don't mess up. So let's go through this. We got a mana potion, we got heal potion and 2 mana potions. Now normally I would start off with a heal potion and 2 mana pots. At the beginning of the game in the chat I will ask if people are actually using, are actually going to be placing harvesters. Normally they will say yes, and I will do a little cheer and be happy and already start the game off on a good foot before you've even got in. So communication in the chat, always very good. Even if you notice people warding up a lot more early game as well, depends on when you take your ward really as well. So wards, really important. So you could start off with your ward after you've gone through your health and mana potion, just to be extra safe. But normally I start off with a tempered plate, and I will build upon that with extra armor as well. Now I've got tuned barriers and tempered plates in here as well, so I will, you know, sporadically place this around. This build depends on what point you are in the game, and depending who your verse is on the lane, and depending upon how much they're able to gank, how much they're able to kill you in team fights, especially, you know, early game as well. So I would always normally start off with a tempered plate, because potential to be ganked is high, and I want that extra, you know, those guards to make sure that physical armor, make sure like chimeras aren't going to come in and just wreck me, even steals and rampages and greystones, all of these people who are just horrible to you early game if they get a gank off, which is why, you know, I level up my Q, but as soon as I can get my right mouse button on my charge, my run, not my charge, sorry, my kind of sprint, I get that as soon as possible after my turret, because it's so important to have that escape. It's not really for the damage, it's for the escape capability as well. And you know, it's a similar thing with your ult as well when you hit level 5. Combine that up with your right mouse button, and then you know you've got some of the best escapes in the game, which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, I might start with my tempered plates, and then I'll build a little bit of damage. I'll grab some meltdown, and that's pretty much the main bulk of my damage, and that's going to be built up early game. You can see I've gone for two casts and 1 minor cast as well, so it's not like, you know, spamming it up to 3, because you've got to think about your build for the whole game. You've only got 60 card points, you know, you don't want to be banging in, like smashing it with like 3 major casts, and then later in the game you realize, okay, I've got a ton of damage on this 1 card, but I've got like just like minor guards and minor healths and stuff, and I've got like low sustain compared to my damage anyway, even though I've got a ton of cards. So keep it balanced between your main stat wants to be, you know, armor resists, and also, you know, even a bit of health. I haven't even got a massive amount of health in this build, if I'm honest. You can see I've kind of stuck some health, a barrier, guard, and a health card there, just in case I want to pop these in. So I might have to empty these just in case, because it doesn't work like that. But anyway, this is the main bulk of the build. This is the main important thing. So like I said, you know, tempered plate, then I'll probably go for a meltdown, and then I'll mix it in with a tuned barrier as well, because you will have energy and physical damage mainly in the game, you know. I mean, if you haven't, this is why I've got the extra, you know, the extra cards here ready. Then you can just build two tempered or 2 barriers. So this is accounting for the amount of card points that you need to get to 60 based on having a tempered plate and a tempered plate, or a tempered plate and a tuned barrier, or 2 tuned barriers. So that, if that makes sense, hopefully that does to you. It does to me at least. So tanky damage. We haven't got Tainted Magic. Now that is a very, very good card. Obviously, you know, it poisons your enemies, and poison is great versus health regeneration heroes like, you know, Chimera or Rampage. You wouldn't, like, having that card is so good. Unfortunately, I don't have it, and I would be in this build if I did. But instead, I've got Fire Piercer. Now this is not a replacement for that card specifically for the exact same reason the card exists. But basically, I get some cooldown reduction, which is good, because obviously, you know, things like having my charge and my ult and all my abilities coming back, cooldown reduction is always nice, especially for getting, you know, things like that escape out, like I said as well. But it does something extra here. So for 10 seconds, your next basic attack on an enemy hero will shred 45% of their energy armor for 4 seconds. Now, because we haven't got a ton of damage in this build, pardon me, this is very nice against, you know, people where you need to, they you know, rely on their sustain and their energy armor to make sure they can survive some of those fights. So if you're rinsing their energy armor off, you're able to do a ton more damage, help out your team, and actually get some kills for yourself as well. This really helps me to get kills, in all honesty, because they don't expect me to have this card. I'm not sure how many people use this card. I don't see it a lot. I mean, I see it a fair amount, but it is very, very nice. But it's been useful for me, and I just get, you know, I get all the chronos, you know, all the chronos, 4, 3, and 2, which is nice. It really, really helps my energy cooldowns, my ability cooldowns, and I don't get that until, you know, mid to late game. Another great card in this build is Drink the Spirits, which is just, I love this card so much. It's so good for Iggy because he kills so many minions with his turrets. If you play Iggy and Scorch quite a lot, you realise that when you put his turrets down, especially if you stack them, you can take out minion waves, especially later in the game, so well. And in a team fight, if there are minions around, wow. So on minion kill or player kill or assist, heal for 5% of killed units' health over 10 seconds. So there's your extra, pardon me, there's your extra sustain that we were talking about earlier in the game. You need to take advantage of things like this because it helps you sustain, helps you stay in the fights for longer. You want to stay in the map. You don't want to be going back to the base just to heal up and, you know, get your mana back as well. Because even if you've just got, you know, enough mana to grab your ult off, at least you're healthy, at least you're in the fight. You can block for your allies as well. Like, blocking as well is so good because you're going to be very tanky. If someone's very, very squishy and they get bursted, you can run in between that player and you can try and take a lot of the damage for them, especially if you're able to sustain with minions around you that you can kill. Then you're going to be able to heal up. Fantastic stuff. I will link a whole game's worth of footage to this build as well. I don't want to put it in the same video because it will be a very long video. I will do a whole game's worth of footage showing my movement, showing how I stack the cards up during the game, and I hope that will be very useful to you in the accompaniment, because obviously I'm not going to show a ton of game footage during this. I'm just going to explain kind of how I use it and the build I go for. So if you look on the left, we have, this isn't in the order, which isn't fantastic to do, unfortunately, but I'm learning lessons as I do. This is my first build video. So start off with your health potion, 2 mana potions, then go to your tempered plate, and I would even go to a tuned barrier if you're having problems. It really depends upon who you're going up against, even in your lane. So if you've got someone who's doing, you know, energy damage, go for your tuned barrier. If you're going to someone with physical damage, go tempered plate. That's basically the way I do it, dependent on obviously the team composition. If they've only got one energy damage dealer and your versus hit the only one, chances are you're going to be ganked at some point. So you just use your brain, you know. Go with one of these two at the start. Very important, I think, to build up your armor early on. And I would say even go for your Lord's Ward next, or the Meltdown, dependent on which lane you're on, of course, and how much they're ganking. Like, this is all very dependent on how the game is going. You need to, this is the way you always need to be building your card decks, and actually building yourself through the games. Don't just be like, yeah, okay, I'm a damage dealer, so let's just build tons of damage and, you know, worry about my armor later, even though I've got it. If you're getting wrecked, all the time by someone, and you know you've got no damage resistance, then it's just going to keep happening. It's going to keep happening until late game, and by that time you've already fed them a ton of kills. That you need to be thinking about that early game as well. You need to be sustainable. You need to make sure that your kills are above your deaths, dependent on obviously who you are, or at least to the point where you know you're assisting your team and you're not screwing them over as well. So you need to survive. You need to make sure that you're sustained in the map and getting those kills. Now the role of again Epic Iggs is to, pardon me, support your team as well as pushing lanes and make, you know, you're the best lane clearer in the game. So stay alive for your guys. Don't go for full damage. I go versus Iggy's all the time that are just pure damage, and I'm just laughing at them. I'm just absolutely laughing at them, because I know that I'll have some tuned barriers, I'll have some energy damage resistance as well, and I'll just be like, I can sustain through this. Okay, they do a ton of damage if they build full attack. But if they've used all their cooldowns and they're running away and I can catch up to them, I'm gonna take them out because I can sustain longer than them, thankfully, as well. And they've already used a ton of mana just trying to kill me. But yeah, so it's important to make sure that you stay sustained in the fights. So, well, like I said, you know, could be a choice between Lord's Ward and Meltdown. Build some damage. Obviously, damage is important as well. But, you know, towards mid-game, you want to be, or, you know, early to mid-game, you can go for, make sure, like, you know, Drink the Spirits is going to be very good, especially as you're starting to push further into the maps, further into their area of the map as well. And Fire Piercer is more of a late-game card for me, really. When there's more team fights, there's more, I don't know, you're pushing more as a team together, and you're, you know, forcing some of those fights. Even, you know, when you're trying to get the Prime Orb and they're trying to defend, this card really pushes the boundaries in terms of taking away their energy resistance. You know, getting your cooldowns back as well to help support your team, to help you get those knockbacks with your ult as well, because your ult is one of your most powerful friends and is one of the best ults in it. I love it so much. If you can get that ult with so many different abilities, like Dekka's ring, sorry, you know, if you can actually knock people into that ring, and you've got an arena where you can just jump in and jump out, and you can put in a ton of damage, and your team really will appreciate the fact that that combination works so well. I've done it many times. Hopefully I'll be able to get some footage in the video for that. If not, then there's always next time. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure how to operate this, because I see many build videos in Paragon where I'm just like, I'm not sure how well that went, but I'm just talking about the cards here, dipping in some footage here and there as well. I will just link an entire game with this video this week, hopefully, or maybe today as well. So it's all about, if you're going to build Iggy in any way, build him tanky with a bit of damage, resistance to energy and physical armor. Drink the Spirits is a fantastic card which I feel needs to be in this deck. Tainted Magic is a great card as well. And that I'll bring that on the actual screen as well. So if you have that, make sure you get that probably instead of Fire Pierce. So this isn't a direct replacement for it, but I've noticed that when I can rip or shred this, it says 45% of the energy armor down, it really helps me to build that extra damage up and to potentially take kills. Naturally, you know, it's fairly surprising to them when that does actually happen, especially versus, you know, like steals and rampages and stuff, because the more you can shred the armor, the weaker they are for you to take down. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know, give me feedback. If you thought it was just bad, and if you thought I was just chatting absolute balls, then please tell me, because the only way I'm going to learn how to do these videos better is for you to give me some feedback. So it's all very situational. Make sure that, you know, you're filling up your cards as you go through your builds. And this works out to 60, obviously, and like I said, not to the fact that if you get all of these barriers, but, you know, like I said, 2 tempered plates or 2 tuned barriers, or a tempered plate and a tuned barrier. Always base this on, you know, the composition that you're going up against. You need to make sure that, because I haven't got a ton of free decks available as well, I've only got a couple of Iggies, this one is a very good all-rounder, which I always use. And my win ratio on Iggy is probably my best, actually, and he's my highest played hero. So thank you very much. I'll stop talking. Take it easy. I've been Jebro from my first ever Paragon build video. Bye bye.